Hello, Amber. How you doing today?
I'm good, Martin. How are you today?
Good, good. Are you ready?
Sure. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I'm pretty much that's always how I'm
Well,
entering these conversations.
I'd like to remind you that on a couple of different occasions now,
Mm,
I've started the podcast,
yes,
and you have, to use your word, hijacked the podcast.
right. And I can do that technically at any time.
That is true. And so I thought rather than waiting for you to hijack the next podcast, I am offering you a
Oh,
hijack of
okay.
today's podcast.
Okay.
Is there a topic or something that's been on your world that you wanted to explore that I haven't been asking you?
Hmm. I mean, there's just so many things. I'll tell you one thing that I'm thinking quite a bit about. And I don't know how much you're even up on this. So this might be. Well, let's see. So I am a fangirl of Amy Webb. Amy Webb is a futurist, and I fangirl pretty hard on Amy. I got to meet Amy. She was a keynote speaker at an event that I went to through Project Management Institute quite a few years ago. She and a fairly small team run a basically they're a think tank, but they're all futurists, and they run this little agency, not so little in that they're little in number, but they are mighty in influence. And they're based out of New York City. And all I can say is when I first met Amy, I was really um she drew me in to talking about the world around us and the advancement of technology. And I've always been interested in technology. I have to say I'm an early adopter of any technology. Considering how old I am, when I was in school, we didn't have computers. They didn't exist. We didn't have cell phones. I'm I have had to adapt to technology considering my age. That being said, I am usually the one that's doing it first and quite happy to learn and make the kind of early mistakes and grow and change. And so I'm fascinated by technology. As a project manager, I leverage it. Amy really pushed my mind the first time I heard her and talked about what it's going to be like in the future as technology and humankind merge. Now, that I have to say, initially it freaked me out. But because of the way she was supposing this with great analytical data and research, I was just hooked. So fast forward to just in the last 2 months, she speaks at a conference called I'm trying to remember. It's like South by Southwest is what the conference is called and has an acronym, and it's a tech conference. And she speaks at this conference every year, and her keynote I always listen to. And it happened just a couple of months ago or within the last few months. And I was listening to her keynote again this week. And, their report that they put out for 2025 was or is, it's 1,000 pages long. And it is her and her team really doing all the work on our behalf without bias. And I say without in that their goal is not to arrive at a destination. Their goal is to farm the data and see what the data tells them. And I think I also respect that because Amy is often surprised. And I think it's always interesting to kind of hear scientists and people who work in analytics tell you that they perhaps proposed that the data would tell them something and then it didn't. And I love that. Oh, they can be wrong kind of part, or they can be right, but they can also be a bit afraid by what they learn. Anyway, I highly encourage people to listen to it. Her keynote's about an hour, and she basically extracts out of this 1,000-page kind of report where she sees us now and where we're going. So I tell you all of that to say she is coining a term that is new to me that I find fascinating. And that is it's not IQ, it's not EQ, it's not even SQ, spiritual intelligence, which is something people are starting to talk quite a bit about. It's LQ or LI, and it is living intelligence. And it is this idea that we are not living anymore as humankind apart from technology. We are already integrating with technology and technology with us. And that kind of train has left the station. Even if you don't know that, it doesn't change the fact that the train has left the station. And that train is never coming back. It's not a circle. It is a track that is getting laid into the future as we speak. So this sort of living intelligence idea. And I don't remember all the data and the stats, not as relevant to me as what am I now as someone who thinks so much about emotional intelligence and also really has forsaken, just general intelligence, IQ, because I've recognized that's not something I was gifted with. I'm not one of those people that was born with high IQ, or at least I don't believe I have been, because it's just not something of any interest to me to gauge. Doesn't mean I'm not intelligent. It just means that's not the way my brain works. It doesn't work in that sort of linear engineer kind of fashion. And so emotional intelligence has been such a huge part of me, and unpacking how I think, and then recognizing that I actually want to learn and grow in my emotional intelligence because that connects me to others. And my predisposition as a human is to not necessarily feel a deep connection to others because it's too vulnerable. But I'm doing the work, and I have been now for the past probably 15 years. Fast forward to Amy, who, like I said, I'm a fangirl of this person for quite a few years now. She's talking about this emerging intelligence that is now new and is the way we will hold intelligence into the future. And I'm just kind of like, oh man, what do I do with that? And it's not using Chat GPT, although that is an aspect of it. It is Chat GPT using us, kind of. And that's a very rudimentary explanation. But the point being, what is living intelligence, and what is that going to mean for us? And for those of us who understand that like I said, the train has already left the station, what are we doing about it? And for those who are in denial that the train even exists, let alone that there is a station or a track, how do we support them to actually integrate? Because, the same person who would argue with me that that's hogwash is the same person who carries a cell phone everywhere they go and would never live without it, potentially. And I'm like, okay, but that's the point. And, in her keynote, she talks about like they're engineering like skin, like literal, like non-human, but human skin based off of what skin is like to a human. And that skin, with all of its ability and nerve creation, is to be then applied to technological devices so that we in the future are not interacting with droids that are plastic or metal, that they actually will and are going to be us and look like us and have their own intelligence that is integrated with our intelligence. Ah, fascinating. So, that's what I am curiously kind of deep diving in right now. And I'd be fascinated to hear your perspective. First of all, if you have awareness of that, or where your awareness is, not to kind of put you on the spot, but I think it would be fascinating because I know that isn't something you and I have ever talked about. And I kind of bring it up provocatively to like share with you, this is where my brain is just in the last week or two. So
Yeah, that's amazing. So, as you know, I come from a tech background, so I love.
Yeah, you're far more engineer than I am.
Yeah, I love how it emerges. I love how it changes the world. And you're right, AI has left the station in the same way that the scientific calculator redefined how we looked at math.
And yet
40 years ago.
That seems so ridiculous because now.
But if you look at math scores before and math scores after, you can tell the interaction between human and tech changed dramatically after.
Right.
I do follow, not Amy, but I do have another futurist.
Cool.
Jane McGonigal is a futurist that I spend a lot of time with.
Cool.
But I do love the emergent AI, and I do follow a number of different things. And truth be told, fans, I'm a sci-fi nerd, so this notion of interaction, consciousness, and personhood,
Right.
going back to Star Trek's The Measure of the Man with is data a person, is he not a person, is a thing that I've been playing with for 40 years. I love this notion.
Yeah, and you love it way more than I ever have known it.
Yeah.
And I will say we've had those
Yes,
conversations
we have.
because I am not a sci-fi person. It's not how I approach this space, but you're right. You have actually way more history here than I do.
Well, on this, I simply come back to this little piece. Every technology is going to do what you programmed it to do, except when we're talking about learning AI and learning algorithms.
Well.
Because you can predict certain things, but you can't predict necessarily what it will learn or how it will learn it.
And then how it will behave.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I love the strengths and I love the limitations. I just saw on the weekend a study about how much AI is in academia today and what does academia do about it? Because it's left the station.
I was going to say, welcome to my world as a professor at a university.
Yeah. Try and tell, but it's like telling a kid not to use the calculator.
Well,
when you built it.
And it's interesting. So one of the universities that I teach at, they have a really strict AI policy, or they did in the fall of 2024, not to be used. It will be infractions, will be brought up on charges of, a lack of integrity if you're using AI. That was fall of 2024. That didn't resonate with me because I thought it was very narrow-minded. By January of 2025, due to the overwhelming academic integrity issue load, like literally the cases were so high that they changed their policy instead of dealing with it. And I thought it was a brilliant move. They changed the policy to basically push the level of use of the technology to be something that's integrated with kind of core learning objectives, and that the measurement tools would be at least considered AI proofed. And by that, I mean asking and expecting students to produce things that, although AI could help them, ultimately they still themselves would have to be really involved in creating the answers or the assessments and whatever. That being said, I'm the prof who says, please feed all this into AI. Please get ChatGPT to do it for you, please. But remember, I will know you've done that, in which case I'm going to look for it to be flawless and also have you in it. Because it's a skill to actually understand how to use the tool and make sure that the tool is creating data that is genuinely your voice as opposed to its own. And it's funny because students are like, oh, cool. And then they go to do it and they're like, oh, this is actually a lot of work. To which I'm like, yeah, that's the point. The point is you're not just getting it to do your homework. You have to train it to do your homework in a way that is going to still be evidence that you've done the work. And I'm super cool with that. Now, the university I work with in this case, not totally cool with that, but they also have a lot of professors that are not as comfortable with the technology than I am. And as a result, those professors want to ban it because they don't want to learn it. And so for those of us who are willing to learn it, we're a little more, no, let's change the assessments.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's opportunity here to actually do cool work. Like case in point, I'm writing a course right now, and some of the assessments, they are video. And I am literally going to require students to produce a video for me. And the video can be them. The video could be an avatar. But they have to produce this whole thing in order to give me, and what the content? Personal reflection. Has to be personal reflection. So yes, they could use tools to develop the whole thing. But in order to do that, they're going to have to paint a pretty detailed picture of themselves and of what we've learned and of the timing and of all of these aspects of the course. They're going to have to push all that data into the tool, and then the tool can create something for them. But they're going to have still shown me enough effort that I can assess the work that they produced. And I think, that for me is at least being conscious that the tools still need human organization to a certain extent. I mean, and then we hear about, just this week or in the last week or two that, an AI model wrote code that allows it to always have its ability to write or change code. And you're like, that kind of goes to what you just said, which is, okay, we can train it, but we can't always predict what it's going to do with its training. So,
Yeah, I just saw not that long ago Simon Sinek on a podcast talking a bit about AI, and he was talking about the strengths and limitations. One of the things he said was, if you tell AI write a book in the style of Simon Sinek,
right.
it could do whatever it's done based on his past.
Yeah.
So it could collect all the data.
Yep.
It could examine all the data, and it could produce a very good.
Yeah.
This reads and sounds like Sinek. Absolutely. What it couldn't do is predict what he's thinking about and wants to do next.
Correct.
Like, for instance, if we were using AI here, it wouldn't have known I was going to hijack the own podcast and hand it back because it's too random and too creative a thought for its own processes.
Yeah.
And so I come back to creativity, that there's always going to, in this interaction between something that produces, and to be clear, it's producing in the intellectual world's space. Until we get to the day and age where it can build its own computers and build its own robots, if you make houses for a living, your job is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
No robots coming for house building and construction.
Well, that we know of. That being said,
until we make it, and really, as someone who loves this, right? I come back to the Matrix or Terminator, right?
Yeah.
When the robot can think its way, and the robot can create itself, and the robot can make its own robots. Why do we need humans?
Well, and I think, these are the kind of questions that I think Amy's proposing, and also her team, is this living intelligence, this integrated, and to be clear, she's very clear about, like, we're already living in this age. Even if you don't believe it, your lack of belief doesn't change the fact that this is now. This is the now. So it is, what will we do with it? And the we do with it is not what's everyone going to do with it, because not everyone's going to interface with it the same way. But as a humankind, how will we integrate with it? And, there needs to be some conscious conversations and thoughts. As a side note, totally love this. When I first heard Amy speak, she talked about the fact that she has a child and did not allow their child to have a cell phone. And I was just like, how ironic is that someone who does this for a living, this is their life, futurist, data, understanding technology, leveraging it, using it, also knows very much that that's not something that is necessary for their child at that age, and is something that they feel really good about not connecting them to yet. And also they were kind of sharing that they disconnect for seasons and pockets. And I was just like, it was really helpful for me even a few years ago when I first heard them say that, because I thought, wow, professionals in this space that know way more than me actually also are consciously choosing their behavior with it. And I think that's where I go, are we as professionals always consciously choosing our relationship and our behavior towards these tools? Not always. And that's, to me, a disempowered state for an individual. I meet so many disempowered people. And people say, oh, what's disempowered person look like? They can look just like you, just like me. And you push at the exterior just a little bit, and you realize underneath they're just racked with anxiety and fear and uncertainty about everything to do with their life and their career and everything that they're working on. And you realize, oh, that's actually a disempowered state to be in, which is why when you then say to them, okay, now we have a brand new tool and you have to make it work, it's like they hit their capacity really quickly. Like their threshold for change is really short, because they're like, I can't, because they're literally pretending that they can handle what they're already handling. And everyone thinks they look like they're okay, but it's not necessarily true. I say this because I know that was me. This was very much me. In fact, not to put you on the spot, but you and I've had conversations where you're like, you are right on the edge of capacity. And in certain rooms, no one would know that of you. But in other rooms, like rooms where I might be in, or, your life partner is in, or your children are in, they know, oh, dad is on the right on the cusp. But in a professional setting, others may not know that. And I'm like, that's because we mask. And I think this is when you talk about living intelligence and technology and innovation and AI. And we haven't even talked about quantum computing, which is actually going to surpass AI without a question very quickly. So you just go, oh, we don't have capacity, a lot of us, for some of this anyway. And I understand it can feel incredibly threatening. But like one of my favorite phrases, and people who know me know I say this all the time, we never cease to be human. We cannot, while we exist and live and breathe, we cannot shed our humanity. And so what does it mean to be human in the midst of all of this? And I think your experience with science fiction has helped tremendously, even from a dreaming standpoint, or like isn't that cool? Like, I didn't have that experience. I didn't watch Star Trek. These are not things that, I have familiarity with them kind of, but I don't, I never fell down into the idea of thinking about them seriously and critically like you have. And I think that has made me ill-equipped to even see the correlations to today. And I think, interestingly enough, science fiction has probably been a really good gateway for a lot of people to handle what is essentially now living science fiction. It is no longer fiction, my friends, right? Like even space travel. These are all things that you're like, really? Come on. And now we realize, wow, like the actual space travel we supposedly have done was done so many years ago initially, and then there was nothing for years or very little, and now we're kind of coming back to it. Um, this all just seems wildly like stuff we've seen in the movies that we just always assumed would stay fiction. Not so much.
Yeah, I have a pretty basic and maybe even rudimentary look at technology, which is simply this. Whether we're talking fire or we're talking AI,
Mhm.
it's a tool.
Yeah.
And I can use fire to stay warm,
Mhm.
and I can use fire to burn something down.
Mhm.
Every new technology is going to have both an advantage and a disadvantage to it. What I think some of the futurists have done very well is give us what the advantages will be. And in fact, most companies will tell you it's going to do this, it's going to do that.
Yeah.
If you look at the promo ads,
Mhm.
it's going to do all these things. But the internet had this exact same conversation 20 years ago. When we have mass internet all over everywhere,
Mhm.
we couldn't envision Wi-Fi everywhere
Mhm.
or a signal everywhere
Mhm.
when we were born.
Yeah.
But now, take it away from somebody.
Mhm.
Actually interfere with something. Let's imagine there's something in the area and it's interfering with all the signal,
Mhm.
and no one's device has anything.
Mhm.
People lose it in the woods.
I know.
Like, they're like, what? What do you mean I can't GPS my way out of here?
I know.
How do we think about our problem solving inside our technology is the question.
Mm.
And I love that because you came back to it, which is human.
Yeah.
We're humans.
Yeah.
And you can't take the human out of human.
Mhm. Mhm.
But that's part of the fun. Like, that really is the fun. Nobody was imagining dopamine addicted people when cell phone creation was being done.
Mhm.
It was, how do I connect people?
Yeah.
Great. But in connecting people, you're also distracting people.
Right.
And how do we have the appropriate, and that's what you're talking about, is the appropriate levels. What's the appropriate amount of connection and what's the inappropriate?
And who determines appropriate? Like, here would be my question is, do we really want governments to be the ones determining what's appropriate? And, no matter what your politics are, that's a question we all have to kind of answer. Because, we all are happy to have government to protect our rights until the government tells us what our rights are. And if we disagree, we're not so sure we like government anymore. And I'm the first person to be suspicious of that whole cycle, because really it is about, well, are we free do we have sovereignty as individuals or even as countries, or are we actually, parts of a whole system? And let's face it, we kind of are. I'm a part of a lot of different systems, right? I play a role in a lot of different systems, and yet I never cease to be human. So, what does my humanity say about this? And how do I feel? We also I don't always ask myself that. I think that perhaps that, and I can sum it up a little bit with Amy. I think Amy made me feel better about feeling about these things. And when I first was introduced to her, I got comfortable with the feelings that she was able to kind of share her own. And I think that's why she and other futurists. I think it's important that we listen and read and are conscious about what they're saying, not to be afraid, but to actually hold our power and to make conscious choices about how to be human in the midst of these things.
That's awesome. So, what would you give to just maybe some final thoughts on how not to be afraid of technology?
I mean, the thing is, it depends on where you're coming from because everyone's context is different. And I want to just say also, like, I understand that I come from a privileged place. I live in a G7 country. And that alone puts me in an environment where I have opportunity to critically think about these things because I am not struggling in other areas that vast amounts of the population of the planet are. So I just would say, like, I recognize even being able to have this conversation is privilege. That being said, I also think because of that, with that privilege comes responsibility. And that is, I think we need to not be afraid of it, and we need to make conscious choice about it because we are doing it on behalf of our entire human race. Some of us have a bigger role to play than others. And I think certainly for many of us as professionals, our privilege needs to be about how do we consciously choose things that make sense to humanity, to the planet, from a climate standpoint, from a social justice standpoint, from a rights and freedom standpoint, not just does it make my life better? And I think it is something important for us to think about in that sort of big picture. How to be not afraid, in my experience, of something is to not ignore it, not avoid it. Ignorance is not bliss because the bliss of ignorance ends abruptly. And it doesn't end with immediately feeling fear. Oftentimes it ends with tragedy because you weren't prepared. And there's no need for anyone to live in the fear for any length of time because we can use critical thinking, we can use collaboration and team to actually see the risks in front of us and to make plans to handle them, to do it consciously. And in the midst of finding those collaborative conversations to do so, the fear lessens. The fear becomes a fire, a motivator, a reason to do. And the more you can have your power over your fear, the more your fear itself is the tool. So I would say if you feel afraid, okay, me too. But what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do
Mm.
with our fear? And let's work together. Let's find each other in wherever we are in whatever context, and let's leverage the fear that we are experiencing to create systems, to think consciously about what we can do. Because it's not one pocket of people that are going to change everything. It's millions of us doing it in collective little ways in all different industries and all different professional settings. And yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. What are you going to do about your fear? And what are we going to do together? I love it.
Yeah.
AI is not going to figure that one out.
No, we have to do that.
We have to do that one.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
next time, maybe you can hijack it on your own. Thank you.